All right, good morning. We are in Exodus lesson 6. And yes, you heard me say that clearly. We're just doing all of lesson 6 in one swoop. After having done it, I kind of wish I'd broke it down. But it was very interesting the way the lesson laid out. Did y'all notice that 4 days you spent on chapter 17? Then you're thinking, am I ever going to do 18? Finally, you get 1 day to do 18, and there's as much work in 18 as there was in, potential, right? There was potential for that much work. Anyway, so now what I want to do then, before we get into what we've done this last week, I want to take you forward into lesson 7's breakdown. I made a very slight tweak on how you're going to handle the lesson next week because I went ahead and looked at it, and I'm really glad I did. We had said do days 1 through 3, 4, and 5. But what I found is that right in the middle of day 3's homework of lesson 7, there's actually a natural break of the curriculum, how it's being laid out. So turn with me to page 64 in your homework. Are you there? Mm-hmm. The very top of that page, number 3, it says, "Now, beloved, for the remainder of the week, we are going to look at the commandments in greater detail." Okay? So what your homework is the first 2.5 days of homework is to do observation worksheets on chapter 9. Well, that's enough for 1 week's homework, right? I mean, that's a lot. Plus, she actually tells you in the very first part of day 3, she gives you some information about the new covenant, and so that you can make some comparison to the old covenant of the law with the new covenant in Jesus Christ, for those who are not real familiar with that comparison. For most of you who've been with me for quite a while, we've done this over and over, so we know this is going to be a breeze for us. It's going to be a review. And 1, 2, 3, 4, she only gave you 4 verses to look at. So it should be pretty easy to handle observations on the 2 chapters. Just remember, you're not going into detail on each of the commandments to really understand what I mean by don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for instance. You're going to get to that in the second half of that week's work. So you're going to do, let me give you the pages. You're going to do pages 59 to 63. Okay, so just mark your pages that way, 59 to 63. That is going to be next week's homework. Okay? Then for the following week on 7B, we'll pick up on page 64 and go to the end of the lesson. And it's a lot, actually. So, because did you notice how many topics came up this week in what we looked at? The rock and all the imagery in there. Anyway, that's going to be kind of what you're going to do in lesson 7B when you start on that homework, because it's going to go into each one of the laws and say, what does this really mean? How and you can develop it as much as you want, or if you're a newer student, just stick with what Kay kind of guides you through and get your feet wet on it so that you get something established in your understanding. For the rest of you who have been around a while, like myself and most of us in this room, go ahead and dig a little deeper. Do as much research on it that you can to take you to other cross-referencing and to other insights on it. Watch some videos online. Watch some teachers online. See what they have to say about that. You can just simply Google in there, what does it mean to not take the name of the Lord in vain, and see what kind of pastors preach or teach on that for you. And just build your knowledge base, because that's what inductive Bible study is all about, is you building your knowledge base based on what you do know, and you just kind of build a platform. That is why they call it precept upon precept. You start little and you gradually build on that. And so he who has a lot of knowledge, then you're expected to try to do a little bit more than beyond what Kay just gives you to do. And for those of you who don't understand a whole lot, just drink in as much as you can of what's in the homework assignment. Okay? All right. So now we are back to lesson 6. And I'm going to open my observation worksheets. Go to chapter 17. And I want to do one thing with you right here. At a glance chart. How are you doing? Are you keeping up with it? Are you up to speed with your titles? Have you made any adjustments to titles where you think, oh, you know what? Now that I've had really time to meditate and you've journeyed along a little bit further, sometimes you go back and read a title and you go, that's really not very explanatory. I knew it when I wrote it down because I was deep into the study. But now just going back and reviewing my titles, I'm not really sure if that tells me exactly what's in there. Maybe you need to tweak your title a little bit. That's perfectly fine to do. It's actually very good. I made a couple of small tweaks on mine as well. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm encouraging you to make sure that you stay up on your at-a-glance chart for this particular book. It's a long one. So if you get too far behind on this, you're going to be overwhelmed to try to get forward to keep up with it or catch back up with it. And sometimes you just don't. You blow it off. And I don't want you to do that. This is probably one of the most important pieces that you end up with at the end of all of your inductive Bible study work is this at-a-glance chart, okay? All right, so that takes care of that business. Now, the other piece of business today is, remember last week I told you I began a list on, then you will know that I am the Lord, and I went through and picked out verses. Did anybody go in and try to do that for themselves?
I have just highlighted them through every chapter.
Right. But you don't have a consolidated list. Okay. Okay, you did. Good for you.
Instead of I am the Lord, I did that you may know that I am the Lord.
That works too. It's okay. And sometimes it says it's slightly different. Did you notice you have one more to add from this week? In 18:11, what does it say? Yeah, so now I know that the Lord is what, right? So we see, here's a really cool thing that is almost like the fruit, right? The fruit of God's work is beginning to show itself right here with Jethro. So that's very exciting, very exhorting, and it just shows you how this progress of bringing people into faith, it's a slow thing. And you don't ever know even when it's going to show up. This was not an encounter where Moses went out evangelizing. The message simply went out, and Jethro had heard, and then he approaches Moses. Moses gives him more, and then he makes this confession statement in 18:11. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods. So that I wanted to bring that up just to point out that point because it was a good follow-on, I thought, to what we did. Okay, so this week we have two very heavy chapters. 17 is the biggest one. You've spent 4 days on it, which means she kind of wanted to really give you opportunities to discern insights for yourself on this one because of the significance of the curriculum information here. It doesn't mean 17 is less or 18 is less important, but 17 has a heavier doctrinal message within it, okay? Pictorially, right? So tell me what we saw. Let's start with our key words. And that always helps us get our brains going. This is where you start because once you do this, then the brain starts engaging in everything that you're looking at. So I want to start with people. Tell me who are the people that are in 17. What are the names that are given to us?
Sons of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, sons of Israel.
Yeah. Elders.
The elders.
People.
And I'm just going to put the elders. The people would be either the sons of Israel or the elders, right? The people is speaking of Israel. Okay.
Moses.
We have Moses. Joshua. First mention of Joshua. And that is going to be really significant because as we progress in the Pentateuch, Joshua is going to become a key player, isn't he? Okay, so here's your first introduction to Joshua. Yeah, we have this guy named Hur. Now that's a kind of a obscure name that I really didn't know much about until I looked at this one for myself. Did you guys dig into her and find out who he was? And you guys are going to be blown away when you find out what I found out about her and what is going on here symbolically. Okay, go on. Aaron. Okay, Aaron, her, Moses, Joshua, and so there's one people group in here, the Amalek, A-M-A-L-E-K, which are the Amalekites. All those ites that we hear about, that eventually God keeps saying, wipe them off the face of the earth, and he actually closes this Exodus 17 saying that, right? That he has sworn that the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war against Amalek from generation to generation. Could you imagine being a person of a people group with a banner, so to speak, over them of identity, that God is going to war against you from generation to generation? And now, did you think about what the implications of that might mean, or did you try to parse out, does that mean everybody of that nation never came to know the Lord, or what does that mean?
Well, it certainly doesn't mean that nobody ever came.
Right. It absolutely does not mean that there were no Amalekites that ever came to know God. That's what that definitely means. But it does make a very clear statement then about something called the Amalekites. Now, what is going on here with Amalekites coming against who? They didn't come against Moses, did they? No, it came against who? The Israelites. So it's a nation coming against a nation. And so one of the things we learned when we did our study in Daniel is the idea that God raises up kingdoms and he puts them down. Knowing that God has a sovereign hand over those nations which are allowed to continue and to prosper, and those which he will put down. And when we did Ezekiel, we saw a lot of that. Certain ones that were going to be totally destroyed, other ones that were preserved and protected, like Israel in particular, and anyone who came to Israel's side as a protector and a friend. So where does that show itself back in the Abrahamic covenant? How does that present it to us there?
Curse Israel, you'll be cursed.
Yes. Those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. Now, that is not talking about a blanket statement either, is it? And yet it's talking about nation and nation. And I think it's really interesting that this is kind of the first time, at least in Exodus, we're seeing this concept of a banner that is over them. So we want to make sure we get that on our board now for key words, because the idea then that there's an identity that's formed by a banner concept. And we need to have a strong understanding of that. Do you guys ever remember VBS back in the good old days when we used to march in as a group and somebody got to carry the flags? You know, one was called a Christian flag. And we literally stood in the auditorium and we made our pledge to the American flag and to the Christian flag. And I remember that so much, and I don't see that happening hardly ever. I've had it a couple of times when my grandkids were growing up. There were a couple of times there were VBSs that did that, but not very many. It needs to be brought back because there's such a valuable teaching about that concept of the banner. We're going to see that this morning. So keywords, we got all of these are all the names. I'm just going to kind of put a dash there. Now we're going to start with this, and I'll put that banner up there. The banner, or you could put the whole phrase if you wanted, because the phrase itself has declarative meaning and explains why the banner is significant. Okay, so what else did you see in Exodus 17 for key words?
Water, thirst.
Okay, water. The idea of thirsting and anything that's related to the water itself, that they would thirst. Water. I guess I can put thirst. Quarrel. Oh my goodness. To quarrel. And grumble. You can put grumble along with quarrel. A test. Thank you. Test. And okay, so far we have talked about this idea of God testing, right, before. But now what do we see happening? Israel is testing the Lord. And what do we know Scripture tells us about that? Thou shalt not test the Lord thy God, right? Okay. So test has become, how strong of a theme does test become in this total, the fullness of the message in this? It does. It's like it rises to the very top. It's the platform upon which all the rest of the information gets laid, and then there's an outcome to that test. So the test becomes quite significant in here. So you could have had that somewhere even in your title, potentially. What else became a really strong picture in here? The water, but where did the water come from? The rock. How many of you picked up that rock imagery, how important that rock imagery was?
Yeah,
Did you notice?
Other scriptures about
Rock. I did some scrambling through this internet. I found some information on symbolism of stones and symbolisms of rock. And wow, there was it's like everywhere. The Bible, it does have a few varieties of pictures, imageries, the context rules for which one it's trying to give you the message concerning. So we want to definitely develop that. What else?
hands and staff.
Yeah, he lifted his hands and he lifted the staff. Okay. There's a couple more, I think, in here that are important. First of all, when you get to verses 8 to 13, or 8 to all the way to the end, actually. You see this concept of the word fought? They came to, and they fought against them. And any other pieces in that part of the message? Because it's like there's really two distinctive storylines going on in here, aren't there? And yet they're both under one umbrella. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so we're going to try to see if we can get them both under the same banner. Okay? It's just really kind of cool. Okay, fought, and what else? The idea of prevailing. When they prevailed and when they did not. I think it is associated with the hands, right? And the lifting of the staff and the hands. There was a conclusion to all this. We're talking about that banner, but what did Moses build? An altar. Altars are really significant within the scripture itself on the whole. They show up in basically every book I know of that we have studied. All through Genesis, they built an altar almost at every significant place, and it was left as a pillar. And one of the things when we did our covenant study, do you guys recall that? How often did you see the idea of an altar or a pillar? And what did the altar and the pillar, how was it associated with the subject of covenant?
Very strongly.
And what was the purpose of the pillar?
They came together and they had a meal and they worshiped God.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the one called Mitzpah? And if they saw the Mitzpah stone, what was the message there? Don't do harm to me. And I can't remember how that phrase went, but I remember it used to be on all my cards to my girlfriends. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we are absent one from another. And I used to think, oh, that's so sweet. I love that message. And after doing covenant, you're like, no. That literally means God's watching you, and if you break covenant, he's going to kill you. So that was what that mitzvah meant. So, but the stone was left there for what purpose? A reminder. So a remembrance. And so it was a sign of covenant making. It becomes a sign of covenant making. So I just think that's very interesting if you get that fuller picture when you go back here and you see that he has built an altar here. He's making a recognition of a statement of remembrance, but I do think that there's a close association also with, in his own remembrance of making the altar, that it's associated with God's covenant and his covenant people. And we see that a lot in Exodus, where it's the sons of Israel, the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's covenant, 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 covenant remembrance. And so here we have altar, okay? And so if you don't know that, that would be one of those things that, you know, again, you have to learn the Word of God a precept upon a precept. It takes time to get all these pieces of information together. But it doesn't hurt for me to just drop it out there and let you know that that's where you should go to look at this and study this out, and that there's deeper meaning. Scripture, especially what we've seen in Exodus, profoundly uses symbolism through all kinds of things. I mean, it's the bread, it's the rock, it's the staff, it's the cloud and the pillar and all these things. And we're going to look at more of those symbolisms today again yet. And there are some that are much more subtle. And until you've done all your really good inductive study, you've done your word studies and cross-referencing, maybe reading or listening to messages online to help you build knowledge about it, they don't present themselves real clearly. But it's awesome when you see them. And when they're true, you know it. You see it and you go, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I know that, right? So cool. Okay, how about geographical locations? Yeah, Rephidim. And I don't know if I'm saying it right. I have no idea.
No, I looked that word up or whatever. It means rest stop.
Uh-huh.
Like when we have a
Body, it's where you pull your car over to make a rest stop.
water to drink.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's right. Yes. So now, one of the things I do want to remind you of before we really get back into this, as we're looking at these geographical locations and the implication of where we're at now in this journey, because it's quite profound, do you remember, and I don't remember, it has to be all the way back in maybe chapter 6 maybe. Remember when Israel first started out on this journey, they were going to exit, you know, at the end of the plagues, and now they're exiting. Do you remember how many people went out? How many men? 600,000 men. That does not include the women and the children, nor does it necessarily, I don't think, include the foreigners. There were some foreigners that decided to go with them as well. So you're talking 600,000 people. You're talking at least 1 million. That's very, it may be 2 million, really. So you've got 2 million people. Did they all get to Rephidim? Or was there some also behind? Were there even some maybe ahead? Yes. Yes, the answer is logically they're not all going to fit on one little campsite called Rephidim, right? But what does that do for you thinking on it from that perspective then? When you're looking at these things, like it mentioned the wilderness of sin, it mentioned Rephidim. What else did it mention? Massa and Meribah. They named them stuff, right? Massa and Meribah. And Horeb. Where was that one? Is that one in this one? Or is it?
Yeah. It's on verse 6, the rock at Horeb.
Oh, there we go. Rock at Horeb. Yes, verse 6. Thank you. I needed to get that on my other. I need to add that on my list, Horeb. Okay, and this is significant because what does this now show? If you think about how many people they were in this traveling band and the geographical location, they're kind of giving you a lot, right? They're here, they're here, they're here. And you're like, well, where are they? Well, they're not 10 or 12 people. There's 600 million plus in this band of people. And so they're not all standing on one geographical spot. They're giving you locations that have been given significant names because of certain events that have occurred there. And they're giving you some generalizations, like this first one, the wilderness of sin. They came to the wilderness of sin. Well, the wilderness of sin, if you look on maps anytime, and they're all over the place, by the way, so just keep that in mind. But one of the wildernesses of sin is in the basin basically, of Saudi Arabia, all along that area there, along the base. So if they were at the bottom of Sinai of Egypt, the water parted, they went into Saudi Arabia, which is Midian in their day, and they went 3 days journey in, it says, and then they approached, then they made a turn and went up, and they came to the wilderness of sin. So that it's just showing you that they're making this travel, they're journeying. In your mind, you can picture it however you want to, and I would not get too wrapped around exactly where. We just follow what it says in your thinking.
For a visual,
Uh-huh.
the Austin population is a little over 1 million people. So
Say it
that's-
again.
The Austin population currently is a little over 1 million people.
Okay.
Visually, you can look at Austin, maybe these are the people
Okay.
that are chunking up and down I-35.
Think of it.
How far-
Austin is
it's
about
all-
the
like,
amount of
how long
people.
is it from the bottom to the top, just I-35 land? Like,
Okay, there you go. That's how many people are traveling. Are you looking like you're not comprehending, Carol?
Oh, I am.
Oh, you are. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. First of all, who wants to travel with that many people? I've been on a bus. One of the bus trips I took with Precept Ministries, there were 200 of us, and we had 4 buses. Yeah, I know. And I'm like, and I'm an extrovert, so I was the one in the morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's time to rise and shine, and everybody's looking at me like, please. They're grabbing their coffee and crunching down their coffee mugs. But anyway, so I say all that. I'm kind of trying to draw you into context of what's going on here. I think so often we go, oh, they were at Rephidim. Oh, they were at the wilderness of sin. Oh, they were at Horeb. Oh, they were at whatever. And it's like you think every single person was in one little spot. No, these were masses of people spread out of over a land mass area like Austin, Texas. Huge, right? Because they're all traveling, they're bringing their carts, not to mention all their animals, their babies, all these things. Okay, so that's the picture in your mind. And think of that. Think of the logistics. Now think of chapter 18. And Moses being a leader and trying to sit counsel over all those people brings a whole new light to it, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Like, oh, you're never going to make it if you keep doing it this way. I love it. It's perfect. Okay, so in the end, if you had to break this down into basically 2 events going on in chapter 17, what would you say the 2 events are? Just, it's another way of thinking about it. I'm not saying titling. I'm just saying, what was the event going on in the first half of chapter 17?
Water out of the rock.
Water out of the rock. Okay. And?
The battle.
And the battle. Okay. Now, I titled it, in my thinking, Testing the Lord. He used the rock and the water and all that. That was what God did in response, but it was about a test. Do you see, if you think of it from that perspective, do you see a relationship to a testing of the Lord to the battle that follows?
I mean, with the battle, his arms had to be up to the wind. And then he couldn't stand on his own, so they had to support his arms so his arms could stay for how many hours?
Yes.
Like, and your lactic acid is screaming at you, put your arms
Yes,
down.
yes. But what you're doing is you're going to a very specific event within the event. I'm saying in the bigger picture about a battle.
Are you just thinking that that's a consequence, that is a consequence of their, because this is not the first time they've grumbled.
Yes,
Grumbled
there is
several
that.
times. Now he's like, I'm gonna, sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
war and things like, that are consequences or judgments, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Can you see the first verses? There's a spiritual battle, though, that's going on within Israel to whether to believe on the Lord, whether to trust the Lord. So it's like a spiritual battle, right? What's it followed by? A literal battle of enemies coming against Israel themselves. So they go against God, and then God allows Rephidim to come against them. And he uses those scenarios to show you the battleground. There's spiritual warfare and there's physical warfare. Is that true in you and I's life as well? Yeah, I know. Susan and I were talking about this a second ago. There's so many things, and you can't even stop. I'm thinking of the things I'm thinking of. You have thought of, I'm sure, your own insights, right? This is the mystery and the beauty of God's Word. It's rich. It all depends on, number one, where you're coming from and how much knowledge you have. That impacts how much you see. But also where you are in your own life, what you tend to pull out of things. Because God wants to minister to your heart. That's the supernatural work of the Holy Spirit through His Word in your own life. So when you are digging and doing all this work inductively in that process, then God is going to meet you right where you are. So I saw this contrast between a spiritual battle and a physical battle. I saw warring against God, and I saw God warring for you. So, and both are true in our lives. Even as Christians, there are times when we war against God. We struggle to obey Him. We struggle. It isn't a war that means you're not saved, and I'm not saying that at all. It's a war of full submission to the holiness of God in your own life. It's a war of fully trusting God in every situation. What are some things that happen in you and I's lives that make us want to war and challenge God?
When He doesn't answer prayer.
Yeah.
Bad things happen.
Yeah. So what motivates your prayer? What's going on that causes you to want to pray and then God's not answering it? A problem. It's usually some kind of trauma or difficulty or testing. And do you remember what we learned? And sometimes forever. Yeah, there are some prayers I can tell you in my life that have never been answered, not yet. Then there are other things that He did answer. He did it quickly. And some things took a while, but finally resolved. But there are those that sometimes just keep going on and on. So the question, if you're thinking about this from a spiritual battle, that's what I see here in this first part. There's a spiritual battle going on. And it literally tells you, what does it say, verse 7, say that they tested the Lord concerning?
Is He among us?
Is the Lord among us or not?
Yes.
Does He see what's going on? Does He not care? Is He unaware that we need water? Right?
He didn't say anywhere that the cloud is still going with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just want to clarify for my brain.
Yes, okay, okay. Yes, okay. All right, so if there's two, I'm going to just put, there's a couple of events in here that I kind of saw going on. So those are all of our keywords up in there. The events I saw the first one is testing the Lord, and you could call that spiritual warfare. And number two, a physical battle, a real battle. A real battle.
So the other thing I read was if Hebrews raised their hands to pray.
Yes, I did.
And so when he
They
was
still
praying-
do that.
When he was praying, they won. And when he was not praying, they lost.
Right.
So that's spiritual too.
Yes, it is.
It's not just physical.
No, it absolutely is not. That's why I'm saying there's a link. I see a clear link between the first. It almost at first to me looked like two events. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. There's these two completely opposite things going on. One is this thing where God's going to provide water. The second one is where God is going to give them victory. But how do they link together? I think it's the spiritual. I think it's the spiritual battle and the reliance upon God and the trusting in God. All those things are part of this picture that God is drawing for us through animated, written accounts of literal events that happened in the lives of Israel. What does Israel know about the Lord at this point?
Literally just parted the Red Sea. I mean,
Yeah.
he just saw God and His judgments and His deliverance and miracles. Really
Yeah,
miracles.
miracles, signs, wonders is what they know about God at this point. So if you've gotten used to a God who just works miracles all the time, why would you not get to the water place again here? This is the second time this has happened and say, Do we have a name it and claim it kind of spiritual teaching that's out there in the world? That it seems like it's gotten quieter lately, but I know it's still out there. I know it's out there. I just don't hear as much about it. But for a long time, it was like hot topic, and the very strong, biblically minded pastors were all about don't fall for the name it and claim it kinds of teachings. You don't want to go there. God is not a puppet for you to just call on him and snap your fingers and he gives it to you. Would you say that's what you see in this first part of 17? Them just going, what? Well, okay. They tested the Lord saying, is the Lord among us or not? If he is, where's our water? Where's our bread? Right? Very interesting. Okay, so already I feel like we've got a pretty good grounding on what we're looking at here in this first part. So let's do our theme for the book. Let's go chapter 17, theme. So tell me what you want to call this on the whole. We know there's basically a couple of, you almost have to give it two titles because there are two subject things going on in here. I don't know how you titled them, and just tell me what you focus on. You tell me how you divide it. And there's no right and no wrong as long as you're within the ballpark of the subjects. Come on, brave souls. You did title, right? You gave yourselves titles?
Titled and raised it and titled it again.
I did too, 700 times.
So now that we've talked, I would do it different. But the Lord brings water from a rock.
That's good.
And victory over enemy, even though victory is not used. Prevails over it.
I actually like your title better than mine. That is really concise. Water from a rock. Here's the good thing about something like that. Very generic, but very pointed. I mean, it gets right to the point of things. The rock. And what we're going to develop here is our understanding of the imagery in the rock and the imagery in the water and what was being taught to us. And on day 3, we did some cross-referencing on that to make sure you got the message, in case you had missed it. I think most of us got it, but for those who are new, may not. But water from the rock, 2 years from now, if you opened up your Bible and you flipped to chapter 17, would you know what that is? Yes, that's a good title. That makes for, see, mine is too long. I put, the rock was struck and gave forth water. That's so much better, don't you think? Water from a rock, oh, that's just like crisp. I love that.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it happens again later.
It does, and it already happened a chapter before as well, right?
Right.
Because the water where it had to be made was made sweet, bitter water made sweet. So that one would have a different title, bitter water made sweet. This one, water from a rock. And you're right, but
Down the road, that one's gonna be way different.
yes, it is. And when we come to the next water from a rock, you're not going to probably title it that. You're going to probably title it Moses Blew It. Right? And he got disciplined. So just so you know that. So when you think that you're going to end up in conflict on that, you don't know that right now. You base it off what you're doing right now. Later, if you come and you see that you have, this is why I say keep this running list of your at a glance chart. Keep it running. And anytime you end up saying that you've got a title within the same book that is too similar, which you're not, because that one's in the book of Numbers, not in Exodus. So you're not going to come to it again.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But if it did come up again, just go back and look at it. So let's see. I put the Song of Moses and Bitter Waters Made Sweet with a Tree was my title in chapter 15.
Okay.
The Song of Moses, that one, bingo, got it. The Song of Moses, that's simple and clear. And then Bitter Waters Made Sweet with a Tree. Well, that tells you everything you need to know about it. What is that tree symbolic of that was thrown into the water? What makes something bitter sweet spiritually? Jesus, the cross. The tree is representative of the cross itself. So that way you keep your title. Your titles will be kept crisp. But that's the value of, number one, you are doing your own titling, and it's a process. And sometimes you have to go back and relook at things and reevaluate and say, how can I make that clearer? How can I make that simpler? How can I just trigger in my mind so I know exactly what's going on in that chapter? That's what you're trying to shoot for, not a title that gives you every detail about what's going on in the chapter. I love Kathy Coles. You know Kathy. She's in my evening group. She writes books when she makes titles. She cannot do simple things. This one is going to blow her away, and I'm stealing it from you, Susan, because I like that one so much. That's a really good time. Okay, now let's see if you can do the second part as well. Who's got that one? Who wants to tell me what the second part is? Victory over Amalek, that would work. Victory over Amalek, it would work. I think the banner has to be in there somehow, because it isn't so important that there's a war. Are there going to be a lot of wars with God and other people against God's people throughout the ages, right? But since what we are seeing in the book of Exodus as we are journeying through this, he is teaching doctrine through imagery of people's lives and the events that occur with him, right? So like when they cross through the Red Sea, think of all the imagery that's in that. The parting of the sea, walking between the walls of water, leaving slavery, being put into freedom, into the land of God's administration over his people, as opposed to Egypt and bondage and sin being over there. So there's all these imageries. So this book is like that.
Say Lord is their banner, and the second part, the Lord is their banner.
That would be.
A little bit more, because you've been talking like last week about how previously I haven't revealed myself by this name. Now I'm reading the Lord is healer,
Yeah.
the Lord is banner. So
That's
you're
good.
revealing another part of his character.
Okay. So the Lord.
Better than the other one.
I think so. And I'm not saying the other one wasn't okay, but when you think about it, if you get water from a rock, and once we build up what that means, is the next part a natural flow of thought? That the Lord is my banner? How was he his banner up here in the water and rock thing? He came in, he gave them provision. He covered them even though they were testing him. His response to their testing was to give them grace and mercy. Would you say that's a banner? Grace and mercy for your sin.
He saved their lives in both of them.
Yes.
He saved their lives from thirst, he saved their lives from
I love it. Isn't that amazing? So we could sit at the dinner table next week and have these kinds of conversations when we have our lunch. And there are endless possibilities of coming to deeper insight about what you're looking at, rather than just mechanically reading it as a historical record of what happened to people. But look deeper. What is the message? What's going on behind the scenes? What is the imagery in each of these pieces? So I like that. That's a really good title. Water from a Rock and the Lord is my banner. I love that. And all you have to do is, when you see the Lord is my banner, you're going to remember, oh yeah, that was when the Lord, they set up that banner. Why did they set up the banner? Oh, because it was about the Amalekites coming against them and they're getting this victory. And then there's all the process then unfolds in like a nanosecond of the pieces of information that were in there. So it's a good trigger title. I like it. Okay. All right. Now let's start with our paragraphs. Let's do.
We have about an hour left.
I don't like that.
I'm sorry.
I know it.
Time.
You're always such a party pooper. Okay.
Time.
I know it. Anyway, okay, 1 to 4. Let's do the very first paragraph. Concerning we know that this is verses 1 through 12, and this is 13 to, what is the end of it? 20, what's the last verse number? I have to, 16? Okay, so 1 to 12 and 13 to 16. Those are your two titles. So let's do 1 to 4. what is, if you have to title that paragraph, how does it introduce itself?
The people grumbling, quarreling.
Yes, so they are grumbling and quarreling.
People test the Lord.
Yeah, does it say that in those? It does.
Why do you test the Lord?
Yeah, that's where do you see that verse? Oh, I'm in the wrong one. That's why I'm having trouble. I'm going, where is it? There it is in verse 2. Thank you. I thought I was losing my mind for a second. I thought, what did I do?
You're 1 to 12 and you're 13 to 16, is that right? If you were the-
I don't know. I'm asking.
Oh, because it does not appear.
One-
That's why I'm like, you're down into.
It's 1 to 13, and then it's 1 to 8. That's why I was asking you guys, because I couldn't find my notes. 1 to 8,
Okay, that makes better sense.
and now then it's 9 to 16.
Yeah, 9 to 16.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'm glad you corrected that so that everybody doesn't think I'm totally losing it. I don't have it actually on my notes here, but it was something I just came to me. I thought maybe that would be helpful if you understand how we're mapping this particular chapter here. Because we have to get all the way through verse 16 on these two columns. That's not going to be easy, so just know that. Okay, and then we got to do all this and then get to the next chapter as well. Okay, I don't need this one because this one's the next chapter. I can set that down. That will help me. All right, let me ask you. So 1 to 4 sets the stage, and you said it's Israel testing, right? Mm-hmm. Israel tested the Lord. Now, if you had wanted to, you could have gone back and even linked this subject matter of testing and just said, how did he test here, and how did he test here, and how did he test here? I think I actually did that for myself. Let me look. See if I've got that in here. I thought I did. I don't have it handy, so it's okay. But I actually did do that. Remember last week I took you back and said, let's go back to the chapter previously and see what the testing was there, and then let's move forward and see the testing again. So we're seeing this idea of testing the Lord, testing them. The last chapter was in 16, and it was the Lord testing them whether or not they would obey his commandments, right? Now we see another testing in contrast. They are now testing the Lord, okay? So it says they tested the Lord. Now, interesting, why were they testing the Lord? Where did they camp?
Where there was no water.
They camped at Rephidim. Let's get the text, Rephidim, Rephidim. And there was no water. No water. That was the biggie. The problem was no water. Verse 1, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. How did they get there?
God, well, in stages, but God drove, like, they were following the Lord, so God put them.
What does it say?
By stages.
Then all the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of sin. How? According to the command of the Lord.
Who put them there?
Yeah. So who took them there? God did. Now, what does it mean by the command of the Lord? Go back to Exodus 13:21 and see what it says there.
The Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them on the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night.
Okay, so there is the very first. Now, I've got several other verses. I did some more cross-referencing on that. You're going to see it again in Exodus 40. It's going to reiterate that. And you can go into Numbers. Chapter 9 is going to say the same thing. That when Israel moved and when they stopped, it was according to God. And how did God command them to make this movement? By the moving of the pillar of light, or by the cloud, the pillar of cloud. So who took them to where they're camping at no water?
The Lord.
Yes. So they went there by according to the. Okay, so let's see. They journeyed according to the command. I like the fact that they said command of the Lord. So this was not I'm sorry, that's okay.
That you just read, was chapter 13, right, 21, 22? Is that
21, uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure, thank you.
You're welcome. At least I hope that's correct. She went there and she read it, so I know I was right this time. This time, yeah. And you can't always trust me because I invert letters and sometimes I drop it or I get into a wrong chapter and I think I'm in the right one. Anyway, you just have to stay on top of me because I definitely can make a mistake on things like that. Okay, so excellent. So in Exodus 13:21 establishes that the movement of Israel, the command of the Lord means the pillar of cloud was moving and therefore they went and they followed it. So if they landed in Rephidim where there was no water, who took them there? The Lord. Now, how do we apply that in our lives then as Christians?
Allows us to be in our need.
It's hard to swallow that for some people. They don't want that kind of complete sovereignty to be given to God because all they want to do is see God as a God who does nothing but gives good from his hand. Now, God does always give good from his hand. He takes your testings and trials to refine you and purify you. So it's for your good. He allows those things for your good, for your strengthening, for your edification, to prove your faith is true. Not for his sake, but for your sake and for the sake of those who are watching, right? So it's always for good. But sometimes you get into bad situations, you're going, a good God would not do this. Why would he bring me here? Why would he take me through this? Why would he make these certain events that are horrible? Why would he allow them? That's what was going on with Israel right here. They get there, there's no water, and their question is the Lord among us or not? Right? Amazing. Yes. So this is why you know this is a spiritual battle. No faith, right? They journeyed according to the command of the Lord, but then they quarreled. They quarreled. And what was the other thing? It said there was another word. Grumbled. They quarreled and grumbled. And is that 2 and 3 maybe or something like that? 2 and 3. Okay, so we see those two words. They quarreled and grumbled. Against who? Against Moses. Isn't that amazing? Okay, wait a second. Who led them there? God did. But they got to blame somebody. You know, so they're mad at the guy that's leading them. So I got to tell you, this was a real convicting lesson for me, even in my concept of church and church leadership, which this chapter precedes 18. We're leading into it. It's the same message in a way, another subliminal message here, which is, do you grumble and complain against your leadership when you think your church or your leadership is not doing it the way you want it? And is your grumbling a righteous kind of grumbling, or is it just you rebelling because you want things your way? That's what I have been doing. I'm confessing. I have been doing that for a long time, actually since COVID. And it has been an ongoing battle, not just for me, but I can tell you, I talk to a lot of people. Text messages, telephone calls, all over the land and literally all over the world. And everyone has been saying the same thing. God has brought us here, I think is the message. He is leading. He's in our lives. He is historically guiding the world to that end-time event that is going to come upon this world one day. We are gloriously going to be raptured out and rescued from it. We are going to get to part the sea and walk right through it. And God is going to be our deliverer. But along the way, are we grumbling? Are we quarreling with God about every little nitpicky thing? It isn't just the way we want it, so we're going to stomp our feet and be mad. Oh, so I'll leave it there.
The thing that convicted me is I think wives subconsciously grumble against their husband.
Mm-hmm.
Because if things aren't.
Oh, I never do that. I never grumble against my husband.
And it's like sometimes they'll say, what am I supposed to do?
I know.
And it's really grumbling against God.
Yes, because
It's when we grumble, no matter who
Right.
it's against,
Right.
It really is a
What
good
would
spot.
be an appropriate response when your husband or your pastor or anyone is leading you in a way that you don't like? What would be, I mean, because are you saying that we should always just be happy with the leadership and just go? No, of course not.
But I think
So,
it's a knee-jerk kind of like, do something. fix
yes,
this.
yeah. So okay, so we just want to try to draw a conclusion to this. So we know what the problem is. We grumble anytime things get push against what we like or want or need or even what is, quote, right, quite honestly, sometimes. So even if it's not right, and it's not good, and it's not pleasing to us, what do we do when we encounter those kinds of situations? What should we do?
Pray.
We should pray. We should go to the Lord with it. I was sharing, I think it's Psalm 73. Don't quote me, but I think it's in Psalm 73 where he's grumbling about the unrighteous people and how lives are happy and everything's great for them all the time. He said, until he entered into the sanctuary of God. Then he saw their end. I think that when you enter into the sanctuary of God, in that context, it's talking about a different subject matter. But when you enter into the sanctuary of God, you get the same outcome as this psalm teaches, and that is, I saw their end, and I was like a brute beast before the Lord. Because instead of going to the Lord, asking him for his help, and trusting him for a correct way to respond, or what should I do, rather than just emotionally responding, I need to pray this through and say, Lord, where do you want me? Lord, how should I handle my husband? How should I handle my boss? How should I handle this situation with my pastor? Often, all it takes is a few minutes in the presence of the Lord in prayer, and all of a sudden you back down. And you go, you know what, Lord, I'm placing this in your hands. You know what's right and wrong, and I'm not in control of this. This is out of my control. You are the one that is the sovereign over it, and just give it over to him. So here we have Israel, led by God. They have seen the pillar leading them. They're following, and when something went wrong, no water, it's a serious problem, granted. It had to be, though, because there's lots of pictures in this. Their response was, get mad at the leader, Moses. The human man who, by the way, back at the beginning of this whole book, how can I lead? They're not going to listen to me, and he is right. They are not listening to him. Okay, so, great. Okay, so that's 1 through 4. Moses says, why do you test the Lord? Because they came to him, but he recognizes, you're not doing this against me. This is against the Lord. Why are you testing me? They tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? So what we see, they quarreled and grumbled against Moses. And this is, let's just make some conclusions. You said lack of faith. What else? Anything else besides just lack of faith?
Could that be Satan?
Say it again.
Could that be Satan?
Well, certainly Satan loves to stir the pot. So it's a spiritual, so yes, what you're saying, it's a spiritual battle that's definitely going on. What about this problem that we have with our memory?
Oh, not recalling.
How about not recalling what they just went through at the last no water experience, right? The lack of faith, I would call that unthankfulness. And lack of remembering. It's also lack of faith or unbelief. No trust. How about if you learn to trust God? He's already proven himself trustworthy. And what surprises me is so quickly these two water experiences came back to back almost in this very short couple of months, right? And it's a good thing I'm not God. I would have made a greasy spot of them all. You know, I would have just gone, I just showed you at Meribah, I gave you sweet water for bitter water, and you've forgotten already? Do you not know that I am with you? Have you not been seeing the cloud? Have you not been following the cloud? And you're blaming Moses, and now you're not even trusting me to take care of this problem. Why don't you just come to me and ask? Right? Amazing. Okay?
Spiritual amnesia.
Yes. Yes. So let's go to 5 to 7. There's so much more in there about Did you see where the Lord did? This was really interesting. Okay, we got a rock, right? So here's my purple rock. What happened in this event?
The Lord tells him to strike the rock, and water's going to come out of this rock.
Yes, but he says, behold, what in verse 6? I will stand where? On the rock, and you shall do what? Strike the rock. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here we go. Here's my little puffy cloud that's leading them, right? It's literally standing on the rock. And this rock, we know symbolically, the rock is who? Jesus. So when he strikes the rock, who we know symbolically represents Jesus, what is that a picture of? The crucifixion. It's crucifixion all over again. Strike the rock. One of the verses says, "Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter." But there's also the idea of the striking of Jesus. What is his response to this grumbling? He says, "Strike me." This is a picture here of mercy and grace. Unmerited grace. Unearned mercy. He is merciful because he understands they're just men. He understands that they need water. But once again, they have failed to come to him in the right manner. They should have come to him immediately. They should have expected that their God would make a provision. You and I, when we're in hard times, what should we be expecting? God is going to meet our need. God is going to be there. And do you remember what happened with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were thrown into the fire? Whether we are rescued or whether we are not, we will not bow down to your statue, O King Nebuchadnezzar, right? Whether God saves your life or whether he allows you to die, even, if you want to go to that extreme. Either way, what? You're okay because you belong to him. You've put your faith and trust in him. But what is the imagery in the picture then that's going on right here at this moment of their lack of faith, their unbelief, their unthankfulness, their lack of memory? God is the one that led them there. And what does he do? He stands on the rock and he tells Moses to strike the rock. Right? The picture is God's response to our grumbling and our sin and our lack of faith is to extend salvation. So what came out of the rock? Water. Water came out for them to drink. And then we went into some scriptures also after that. But I think actually we're going to cover the water that came out and the people drank. That was in verse 6. So actually I put that in the wrong spot, didn't I? That needs to come into the next paragraph. Let me take it off here. Okay, but we've got the scenario set up. This is what he's supposed to do. 5 to 7 then, what does the Lord do? He gave water from the rock. Okay, so that's our title. Now, what do we know about that? Well, he literally stood on the rock, right? So we see that. He stood on the rock. And he told Moses to strike it. If that's not a deliberately set up picture by God himself, I don't know what is. He orchestrated the entire thing, led them where they would have no water. He knew what they were going to do because he's all-knowing. He knows before it happens. They get there. Now he literally says, he tells them, I'm going to stand on the rock. Because could you imagine, what if he had not said that to Moses? And he just said, strike the rock. And and God's pillar of cloud is on that rock. Do you think Moses would have wanted to reach out and hit that rock where Jesus was standing? Where the Lord was standing in the glory? No way. But he says, Moses, I'm going to go stand on that rock. And I want you to strike the rock. He deliberately sets up this imagery, this picture for you and I to see. It's a foreshadowing of the coming cross. You will see, he will be struck once, one time, once for all. Why not 3 times? Why not 7 times? Why not hit it 2 or 3 or 4? Why not just, once? Why? How many times is Jesus crucified? Once for all. That's the picture. That's in Hebrews 9. You can go back and look at that one later. Okay, so he strikes the rock that he was told to stand upon, and water came out. And they drank. Okay, so now we go in and look. That's in verse 6. Imagery of water. How many don't understand the imagery of water? In this room, I'd say no one. Give me real quickly, what is water a picture of?
Holy Spirit.
Can be the Holy Spirit.
Purification.
In this case, is it speaking of the Holy Spirit, though? Probably not. What do you think he's actually speaking of right here? Life. It's physical life in the immediate of the event, but what is the spiritual message of it? Living water. And that's why then she in day 3 said, I want you to go look at John 7, and you did that. You looked at John 7, 37 to 39. And what did Jesus say he wanted the people to do? Yep. If anyone is thirsty, what? Let him come to me and drink. So that rock. Now, then we get commentary. This is wonderful thing about anytime your New Testament gives you commentary on your Old Testament, it helps affirm the exact message that was supposed to be there. And literally in 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4, it is a commentary on this Exodus event. Right? Did you notice? It talks about Moses, talks about the wilderness, talks about the rock. And what did Paul explain to us about this event that's going on right here in Exodus? Who was the rock? Yeah, the rock was Christ. That's the very last thing he says in that explanation. So he gives you the whole scenario, so he lets you know, and you make the connection. It's back to Exodus. And in that commentary moment, he says, and that rock was Christ. So I'm going to expand this cross picture. The cross stood upon the rock, and the rock was Christ. Isn't that amazing? Losing my lid. There it is in my hand. Okay. Any other thoughts? So she also took us to Numbers 20. I don't know why she took us there, except that she knows that some of you know there's another rock experience that's very similar to this. And I think what she really wanted to do, I know she left it, and for new people, this would be very confusing, and they'd be going, I don't get the connection here. I think all she was doing is letting you know there's another water and rock experience, but it's not the same one. It's going to happen much later, actually probably 30 or so years later. It's at a time when Miriam is going to die. It's in a different location, and the outcome is significantly different. Oh, Moses does not obey what God says to do, does he? As a matter of fact, I remember the first time I read that is that he struck it twice. Is that right? And I said he ruined the picture. The picture was established right here. How many times was he to strike the rock? Once. Why? Because Jesus is crucified once for all. And so in the second one, he picks that up, and God didn't even tell him to strike it because the picture had already been set. He was to speak to that rock. And instead, he takes this rod and basically strikes that rock twice, I think it was. And in doing that, he destroyed the picture. And that's why the judgment on him was so severe. So just so you know that, beyond that, just know it's a different event, a different message. And when you get to Numbers eventually, if we ever do, then you can go in and make some more clarifications on it as well. Okay? Oh, totally. Yeah, you're right. That's what I'm saying. So as long as you understand that and you aren't getting the two confused, you're good. This is the first event of the striking of a rock, and it's the proper one that gives the proper picture. God is establishing doctrine, and it's going to be, I think I wrote it. Let me see if I've got it in here. I don't see it. But it's in Hebrews 9 that you can go in and see that Hebrews is a great book. You know, I told you I started a new little study with a friend in Hebrews, and I went back and have been reading all kinds of things in Hebrews, and in there is that one statement about him that he's better than, he's better than, he's better than. That's what the whole book is about. He's better than. And one of the things is in the conversation about Jesus, his sacrifice is different from what's going to be established here in this book with the law. The law, they give multiple sacrifices over and over. Why? Because they're only symbolic. But when Jesus does it, what? It's the true sacrifice offered once for all. And that is the message here. So this is the right message. Strike the rock once and it gives forth living water. Okay, 8 to 13. Now we're changing subject matters, right? 8 to 13 is what? It's about the Amalekites. And what did they do?
They came to fight.
Yep. I don't have room to write the whole title because I write too big. The Amalekites came and fought Israel. Okay? Fought against Israel. Okay, now we got another picture going on. Great imagery in this one. Oh, I wish I could draw a picture like they have on this little clip art I have, but you're going to get it in my chart, and I encourage you to go in, actually print out this chart and look at this picture because this is really impressive what you're going to see here in a minute. Moses, what is Moses doing here in this encounter with the Amalekites?
He appoints Joshua to go collect the men to fight.
Yep. So he's doing some good strategic, what do you call that, when you allocate to other people, you go do this, you guys do this, I'm going to do this. He's actually doing some sharing of the workload here, which is different than what we see in the next chapter, right? But he says, now, Joshua, choose men for you and go out and fight against Amalek. Tomorrow, I'm going to do what? Station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So it's almost like he didn't have to have instruction from God, did he? He now he's starting to get the swing of things a little bit here. He's starting to understand that some things are obvious, right? You don't have to wait on God always to tell you exactly. If you've already got a storage of knowledge of how God wants you to behave and wants you to act, you already have a stored up knowledge of what God has instructed you to do in something similar, in similar situations previously. Remember with Moses, one of the things he told Moses when they were about to cross the Red Sea, and he's like, okay, Lord, now what? You know, we're trapped. He says, Moses, lift up your staff. You've been doing miracles for months now with that staff. Lift up your staff and the people will go through on dry land. So he then obeys God. Here, have you noticed the change? I don't know if you noticed it or not, but he just did it. He says, okay, you go do this, you go do this. I'm going to take the staff, and I'm going to go up to the mountain. I'm going to hold this up, and it's going to be like the parting of the Red Sea. That's what's going on in his mind. Why? Because he has history with God. He has already learned the principles of doing what he knows he should be doing. At least in this moment, he's doing it right. Later, he's going to blow it, but, he does it right here. And so then Joshua did as Moses told him, and he fought against Amalek and all those men. Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up on the top of the hill. So it came about that when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let his head down, Amalek prevailed. So there's a picture. What's the picture? What's the message?
Prevailed because of God.
Because they're trusting God. Yeah, they're literally lifting, in a way, they are lifting a banner. Can you see it? He's lifting a banner of the Lord's power and authority that was given to him by the Lord God himself. And he knows the symbolic picture of that rod. He lifts it up. And as long as he was able to stand there, but how long does that take? Have you ever tried to stand and hold your hand up holding something? In about maybe 20, 30 minutes, you're doing this, and then you're like this, and then, yeah. So maybe not even that long. For some of us, yeah, maybe 5 minutes for some of us, right? I don't know. I suppose if I stood here holding my water cup up, in probably not 20 minutes. I'm already tired. Okay, so that's the picture. But the good thing is, the good news is Moses seems to have learned something in this moment. He's actually remembering and following what he should be doing. So it says, but Moses' hands were heavy. Yeah. He's an old man, remember, he's past 80. Then they took a stone and put it under him. Now there's another great picture. What is the stone a picture of? Jesus, the rock. Now I don't know if that necessarily is what the implication is right here, but I certainly can see that it could be, because what is he resting on? Where is he getting his strength from? He's sitting upon the rock for his strength and for his support, right? And then it says, and then he sat on it, and who stood next to him?
Aaron and her.
Yep. Aaron is on one side, Hur is on the other. So then who's in the middle? Moses. So this is really cool, you guys. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of points on the board here, but I want you to see the picture. We have Aaron on one side, we have Moses in the middle, and then we have Hur on the other side, correct? Who did word studies on those men? History. What do we know about Aaron? I bet you know a lot.
He becomes the high priest.
He becomes the high priest. He becomes high priest. And what is Moses known for? He is the law and prophet, right? Who's her? Let me see if I've got it in here.
I looked him up. What do you want to know?
I want to know, what is his history? And do you have a scripture verse on it? I know I had it in here somewhere, but I obviously.
He's identified as the son of Miriam, Moses' sister.
Yes. If he's Moses' sister, who is he? Okay, but actually he's not his sister. It would be a sister-in-law. Go to Exodus 31, verse 2. Because I want to make sure that's in the house of Moses, who is of the house of what? The priesthood also, right? Yeah, but we want to get her in the right family, because her is the one who married into the family, okay? So,
Tribe of Judah.
Exodus 31:2, read it really nice.
Yeah, called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah.
Okay, the son of Hur of the tribe of Judah. Ho ho! Hur of the tribe of Judah. And so who's Judah? Who's the law and prophets, and who's the high priest? Well, in the tribe of Judah, that's the kingship, right? So you have prophet, priest, and king in that imagery. Think about it. So on this imagery here that I've given to you, on my homework, I put it actually into my text. I typed out my own observation worksheet, and I put it in there. I wrote their names over the top of it, and I put Aaron, he's the priest, Moses, the law and prophet, and Hur is the king, because it's prophet, priest, and king. Symbolically sitting upon what? The rock, who is Jesus, at the top of this hill, hands lifted to heaven. Oh, what a beauty. I want that portrait in my house now. I'm like, no one else would get it, but I would be so inspired every morning when I got up and looked at that on my bathroom wall or wherever I could put it. That is a picture. That is a beautiful picture. The symbolic, it's Christology in totality, everything about it. Now, was that intended? Well, it sure seems obvious to me. You know, if you miss it, are you missing out a whole lot? Well, no, there's a whole lot more in here to see anyway, because he's going to go on to tell you about what was taking place on that mountain. What does he say is happening up here? The Amaleks came, these three men, they all stood upon the rock, they held hands lifted to heaven. Hands lifted to heaven. So hands lifted and sitting on the rock. Oh, I got to get down here, I guess. It's hard to write from way up. And sitting on the rock. What verse is that? He's sitting on the rock.
12.
12, thank you. Sitting on the rock. hands are lifted. He's on the rock. The rock is Jesus. Hands are lifted to heaven or to God himself. And then what happens next?
Once his hands are
They have victory, right?
and when the sun set, they have victory.
They had victory.
They overwhelmed Amalek.
Oh, I just love it. Yeah, it wasn't a small victory. It was a powerful victory. So the imagery there is when you've got the prophet, priest, and king, and you stand upon the rock or sit upon the rock, and you lift your hands to heaven, you have an assured victory. Isn't that amazing spiritual message in that whole imagery of that? Now, see, you just thought it was a battle. It was no battle. It was a battle. It was a spiritual battle. And it has a spiritual message in it for you and I as well. So they prevailed against Amalek. Now, 14-16. The last part, what does Moses do? He builds an altar. And it's called, "The Lord is my banner." And I don't know about you, but I almost feel like you could take the idea, the picture of him sitting upon that rock. He has his hand lifted up, and he's holding that staff, right? His banner was already lifted. Now he builds an altar and calls it, "Your banner is over me." And that, we know that when altars are built, they're built for what? A reminder, a remembrance, and as a sign and a witness. It's a sign to remind you. It's a witness to declare what happened in that moment, in that time. And names of things gives it identity with the thing of which it's being. So the idea here where it talks about a banner, did you all do a word study on the word banner?
The flag.
So let's do that. A banner. And it's number 3071, right? A flag. It can be a flag in this idea. It's a flag. What else?
Jehovah Nissi.
It means, the meaning of it is
The source of victory and protection.
or actually I should say translation. The Hebrew word is Jehovah Nissi. So it's another name for God, a name for God. And that name for God, somebody described for me what you know. If you just go back to high school. You got teams and you're all sided up with your teams. And you're handed a red flag and you're handed a blue flag and you're handed a yellow flag. What does that flag do for you?
Identify what team.
It identifies what team you're on. Isn't that a thought? It's a nonverbal communication of identity with one under whose flag you stand. In this case, then, the banner over me is the Lord's banner, and that is the thing which he then is identified with, and in a way, it's a almost, I would even say, another kind of acknowledgement, or at least what would you say, a blushing pass at the concept of covenant. Do you remember when in covenant, one of the things that David and Jonathan did when they cut covenant was, what did Jonathan give to David? Yeah, he gave him his armor and he gave him his cloak. And when he put that cloak on, it's like a banner. And when he walked through town and he came to the king's door and knocked on the door, says, "Let me in, look at my banner." Right? Are you kind of following me? So this is a beautiful picture here of the idea that Moses was recognizing that as he stood with that staff lifted to the Lord, that it was like a banner that was over him. It was an identifying marker, a signia, or what were some of the other words? A signal pole, which I thought that was interesting, a signal pole, because the idea of a staff. And it gave this nonverbal communication of identity. So isn't that beautiful? There's a lot in this one thing here. Israel, basically in this case, what is the identity for Israel? Israel is marked how?
No circumcision, is that what you're talking about?
No, in this particular storyline, how are they marked? What happens to Israel? At the end of the war, the battle, what happens? They won. They are marked for victory by this banner, right? But in contrast, what about Amalek?
He's gonna be God's gonna war with them forever, generation to generation.
Yeah, he's marked for judgment. That's an amazing thought right there. Now, and he goes, write it in a book. How sure is God that this is actually going to happen? Exactly. He says, the Lord has sworn the Lord will have war against Amalek from generation to generation. Did anybody do any research about Amalek? Tell me what you learned about him, and why would God be saying this? Why would God just, out of the clear blue, go, those people are horrible, they're all dead men? Why would he do that? Does that sound fair? If you're an unbeliever, or if you're a young believer and don't understand the character of your God and have your faith and trust in that, you could definitely look at this and go, that doesn't seem like a fair thing for God to do, to just look at Israel was grumbling, and yet he does this great thing for them. But Amalek comes fighting to preserve his own land, and they're probably crossing on their land, and they're like, and he's mad at Amalek? What's going on?
He's the grandson of, Amalek is the grandson of Esau.
Yes, grandson of Esau. And we know what Esau was like. What was the character of Esau?
No fear of God.
No fear of God in him. He sold his birthright of being the covenant bearer son as the firstborn, sold it to his brother Joseph. Or Jacob, sorry, Jacob. Wrong one.
All those James.
Yeah, all those, well, yeah.
Finally destroyed by David.
He eventually is, now, interesting about that though, he doesn't fully, even David doesn't fully destroy him, but he does do a better job. But why would God tell them in this moment, I'm going to war with him? And there was a verse that did she take us, or did I just do it? Where I looked at a verse where it said that God commanded them utterly wipe them out. Oh, it was to Saul, King Saul.
And they did it.
And they didn't do it. And what happened generation by generation by generation? They kept coming against them. So was God's judgment when he told King Saul, utterly wipe them out? He had Agag, the king of the Amalekites, in his custody, and he had not killed him. And Samuel approaches the camp and he says, what is this bleating I hear in my ears? He was very angry with him at that point because he had not obeyed the Lord in wiping them out utterly and killing all their livestock, all their children, everything. Why would God say that? Knowing what we now know, that to this very day they are haters of God and God's people, and that they continued generation by generation to go to war against them. Probably one of the crowning recorded records of this is in the book of Esther. Haman. And who was Haman? Haman the Agagite. His bloodline goes right back here to the Amalekites. So, what do you think? Should they have obeyed God all the way back with King Saul? If they had obeyed back in the days of Saul, what? Not all those extra wars, not all that extra death, not all that extra oppression against Israel. What if they had obeyed God? Think of how many people would not have died in wars, and they would have had much less stress and much less struggle had they just obeyed God. Does God know the end from the beginning? I thought of Genesis chapter 6, where God looked down upon the earth and he said their hearts are utterly evil. Every intent of their heart is evil. And he wiped them all out. Why? Because God knows the end from the beginning. He could look at those generations and he knew where they were headed. He knew they were all going to continue in their evil deeds. So he saved the one righteous man, that there was a glimmer of hope, And he said that he walked righteous before the Lord. He saved Noah and his 3 sons and their wives, put them on a boat of safety, and utterly destroyed everyone else. He was not asking Saul to do anything that he himself had not done. And you know it wrenched the heart right out of our God in having to do that. But he knew where it was going. So what is the lesson in this for you and I? Do you go, that's not fair, God? That's just wrong for you to just wipe them out and to say you're going to war against them forever? Like a declaration of eternal condemnation against these people? You're not even going to give them a chance? As a nation, on the whole, these people will never submit to God. And God knows that. And this is not going to be the only people group that you're going to read about in the Word of God where this same thing happens over and over. He's going to speak about Edom and other places that he's going to utterly destroy. Why? He knows their heart. He knows that nation, its leadership. Will he save the individual out of there? Of course, if they will turn. And he knows that too, and he has a way of doing that. But on the whole, what he's saying about the Amalekites is that they are going to be a people that he is going to war against forever. And part of it is because his own people did not obey him. Okay, so we've only got 15 minutes to get through the next chapter. It's going to be a quick one. Any other points on Exodus 17?
So the other imagery that I read was that the Amalekites were the first enemy of Israel. Israel didn't know how to fight.
Right.
Slaves. And that it could be a picture of the flesh that we're going to war against.
Yes.
War against for the rest of our
Oh,
life. You
abs-
can't allow sin in your life. You've got to let Jesus defeat it for you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many
much.
possibilities on this. Okay, let's go to Exodus 18, and I'm going to kind of whip you through what the key words are. I'm just going to give them to you. We have Jethro, Moses, and Zipporah in the first part of this. Also the 2 sons, Gershom and Eleazar. And then he talks about able men, right? He's going to assign some able men later. At the beginning of the chapter, you see this word heard and told. First, Jethro hears something, and then later Moses tells him something, right? So hear and told. Then on the second half of the chapter, he talks about the word alone. I think that's a pivotal, important key word.
What verse is it?
Alone. You cannot do this alone.
Oh, alone.
Yeah, alone. Verse 18, you can't do it alone. It's not good, right, that you are doing this. What you are doing is not good. You cannot do it alone. And even though it's really, I think it might only be mentioned at one time, the idea of it being alone. But one of the things that's very interesting to me is in the last half of this, where he's talking to him about leadership, and he's saying you can't do it alone, and he gives him some pragmatic things. It's pretty clear cut. If all you want to do is get the superficial on it, it's still very educational. I know there are books written for leaders of companies who are godly men, and they want to lead their companies in a godly manner, and they use instructions like this. How should I run my business? Well, if you have a large business, this is a great prototype for how should you do that. You need to learn to delegate. You need to learn to subcontract out work that you don't need to be handling yourself. And then there's the word judge and the word blessed and rejoice in that first part, blessed and rejoice. Now, when you look at all this idea of not doing it alone, I want you to really capture that thought, not doing it alone. So key words. Alone, okay? That one to me, I think, ties everything together. What do you see happening in the first half of Exodus 18? On the whole, if you're going to title, we're going to have to come up with a chapter theme, but we'll get to that next. But what we want to do is look at it's going to be 1 through 12, right? And what do you think is going on in 1 through 12?
Moses is telling Jethro.
Yeah, he tells him what's happened, but what's the first thing that happens? Yes, they have heard what the Lord has done. But what is the first thing, though, that he's heard it. That seems to be a catalyst, right? The catalyst to do what? To return what? His wife and children. So what was Moses before his wife and children returned to him? He was alone. Isn't that interesting? Oh boy, this is really interesting. He was alone. Now, if you, I'm a military wife, and a lot of you have been, or are, maybe even still are, those who are listening. But other professions as well. What happens when the family unit is separated for whatever the reason might be? Wife and kids are one place, husband's another place. How hard is that? What does it do to you emotionally and in every other way? Even if it's necessary, right? And in the case of Moses, where he sent his wife and sons away to Jethro to watch over her and take care of her, why would you think? We don't know, but why do you think maybe Moses did that?
Safety, yeah. Safety.
Safety, probably. That's a really good reason. What else? I know that when my husband would go on missions, he was flying B-52s at one time in his life. He had to go. One time he was on the Inspector General, whatever you call that, where he'd go around and inspect the different bases on their finances. But when he had to go away, why was it good that I wasn't there with him? He could focus. He needs his attention on something that's really urgent in that moment. Often when men go away and they're isolated from family, usually a business or in particularly the military, they do that deliberately. They want the husbands removed from the distraction of family because they have a job to do that's dangerous, that requires full attention and full obedience. And if you have a wife and kids on your shoulder or on your arm that you're worried about or that you're thinking about in the immediate, it's a distraction. So we can speculate on all kinds of things, but what we do know is she had been removed at some point. But where was she before this? Do you remember back in Exodus 4? They were on their way back to Egypt to start this whole process of the plagues and all this. And who was with Moses? His wife Zipporah. And what happened to her in that particular event in 4?
Was she intervened and circumcised?
Yes, she circumcises. I think it's the second son that she circumcised because she has the first one when? When the first one she has was when she's in Midian, right? And she names it. He named it. I'm a sojourner, right? And now on the traveling back, he's talking about the Lord being his deliverer through the second son. Very different names, but yet both paint a picture, correct? So Jethro has these two boys with these names. Think of this, right? And what do you think the names do for him, knowing what the names meant? It's a constant reminder. And if Jethro at that time in history, in this storyline, maybe he was yet still a worshiper of foreign gods. But every time he heard or spoke to his children, his grandchildren rather, he would remember these two very declarative statements that Israel, Moses, and his people had been sojourners. They had been exiled into a place. Then the second son is born, whom he now has and is caring for, or has been for the past several months or a year, however long it has been. And now he's saying, and the Lord is going to deliver. So interesting, because it tells two prophetic principles of truth. One is both true in the moment and true in its fulfillment of what God told Abraham. You are going to be in captivity for 400 years. God told him that back in Genesis 15. And so Israel has been in their captivity. And for that reason, Moses and all the children of Israel have been sojourners. Out of which land? The promised land, Canaan. Then later, when he goes to Midian, he's still a sojourner, and he names his child this. That first child. The second child is born as he's heading back to Egypt to do the work of God and to deliver the people. So he names the child according to that. So these two messages have been on the ear of Jethro for many years. I don't know, probably 40, since he knew Moses for 40 years, right? I don't know how old the first son was, but the second son was born recently because it was born on their way back. Which is very interesting to me because some of the people don't seem to have that whole storyline figured out. But it's really interesting when you think of it that way. But what we're seeing here now then is they are being reunited as a family. So in a way, the second half of the message, you can't do this work alone. You also can't do life alone, right? Do you remember what God said in Genesis when he created Adam? It is not good for man to be alone. And he gave him a helpmate. I can hear the jokes. My husband would say right now. Okay. My little helper. Okay, so the first thing here then what we see is Moses is reunited with family. Right? And the second half of what's going to go on in here is, besides that he's going to be reunited with the family, is what is he going to gain because of all the things that are unfolding here? Well, that's in the second half of the chapter. But what about the bottom part here, starting in verse 18 through 12, or 8 through 12, rather? What is Jethro's response to Moses when Moses begins to say things to him about? Yeah, he begins to bless the Lord, rejoicing in this message. And I wish I had time to really dig this one out for you, but I don't. What are the things that transpire as soon as he makes this declaration? I would call it a confession of faith, confession of truth. Yeah. So the number in verse 11, I know that the Lord is greater than all these other gods. That's a confession, right? Indeed, it was proven when they dealt proudly against the people, meaning when Pharaoh came against God's people and God responded, it was proven that God is greater, because who lost? Egypt, right? If you needed to, by the way, that particular verse, I went in and looked at different translations in different Bible translations to get a better understanding of what was being said there. What was proven is that Pharaoh was weak, Egypt was weak, their gods were weak, and you can definitely go back and track this back to previous references where God said, that's what I'm going to prove. I'm going to prove the impotency of their own gods and the impotency of that king, that I am greater, and they will know that I am the Lord. That's what he kept saying about Egypt. They are going to know that I am the Lord. After he makes this confession that the Lord is greater than all these others, God and Egypt, their gods and Egypt itself, then it says Moses, Jethro's father-in-law, I love the fact that he keeps connecting him. Did you notice he keeps connecting him? Emotionally, there's a connection when he says his father-in-law, as opposed to saying the prince of Midian. It's his father-in-law. He says he took, what did the father-in-law do? Took a burnt offering, and he took sacrifices. What is that reminiscent of? Covenant making and worship, right? And then he does what? With the elders, what did Aaron and the elders came? Yes, they ate a meal. Martha, what is that all about? That's covenant making. It doesn't say that he's entering into a covenant, and I don't want to presume I know that for a fact, but I'm telling you it has all the earmarks of covenant making. He makes a confession, he gives a sacrifice, and by the way, the two sacrifices, if you did word studies on them, that first one, that burnt offering, that is the whole burnt offering. That is the one that they do on the Day of Atonement, right? And then the other sacrifices has to do with peace offerings and thanksgiving offerings and personal sin offering, that kind of thing. But the whole burnt offering, that's atonement for sin. So that's very significant, I think, if you're looking at this and trying to say, what's going on here with Jethro? Well, it looks to me like he's entering into covenant with God. He's now made a confession. He's now come to full realization. He's rejoicing. He's saying, blessed be the Lord in this. So he's giving God praise. I mean, all the right signals are here, correct? And it says, and he ate that meal then with him. And so what is Moses and all the elders coming to eat this specific meal with him telling you? What are they doing? They're accepting him into their fellowship and community. Not alone anymore. Again, not alone. So in the bigger picture, Moses has been reunited with family, no longer alone. And concerning Jethro, what has he done? I just wrote, he gained a brother of faith. Now, people could argue that I'm stretching. I don't think I am. If you don't see it, it's okay. Whatever it is, he's doing the right thing. He's responding positively to the message about God. He's eating this meal. He's giving him sacrifice. He's doing everything a Christian would do if they love the Lord.
Well, and not only that, when you get to the next part, this man is now giving counsel that Moses is taking.
Exactly.
So
that's where I kept saying, how do you connect what's going on in the first part with the second part? It's all about, it's not good. So I titled the theme of this, it is not good to be alone. Good? Oh, I'm happy you like it. Because that's what seems like he's reuniting with his family. He's gained a brother of faith in 1 to 12. Now in 13 to 23, what's happening? Jethro is going to give him counsel. And I would even call it wisdom, right? This is wise counsel. This is godly counsel. And he says in the giving of the counsel, what does he tell him to do? Basic, delegate. Delegate the work. Or share the burden, he says, I think. Share the burden.
can you imagine Moses if he had to hear the complaints of 1,000,000 people constantly about he took my pencil or whatever they were griping about?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go through and do this for you, 1 to 4, because we are out of time. Here we see Jethro. He heard all that God did for Israel. He had already heard that. How had he heard it? So I did some research, and it's on my paper. How did Jethro hear before he actually went and heard it from Moses himself? He was all the way in his area of Midian, which says he went to his own country. It doesn't mean he left Midian. He went to his own section of the country, okay? Egypt was a cultural hub and an influence of that time. Just so you know that. They were social influencers. Did you know that? They didn't even have internet, but they had their own internet. Egypt had extensive trade networks on land, and the Nile also facilitated easy travel and trade. So think of how many ships and how big that place was, and how they were a very strong kingdom. And they were actually, when you go back and do Daniel, and it starts with Babylon, what came before Babylon was first Egypt, then Assyria, then Babylon. These are the major world powers of the day. At this time in history, Egypt is the major world power, in essence, okay? So there's Egypt. They had this extensive trade networks. They were also nation-building influencers, and they would do diplomacy. And so their diplomats would travel, and other diplomats would travel to them. Mostly, other travelers would come to them to negotiate deals or whatever, and then guess what they would do? They would go back to where they were from, and they would talk about what they saw and what they heard. How about trade routes as far as food and goods and wares? This is probably the most likely where Jethro would have heard it, is when these caravans would come. Do you remember how Joseph ended up down in Egypt? A caravan. He sold them to a caravan and sent them down into Egypt. That caravan is still running the circuit. And so what you see here is the trade routes between Egypt and the neighboring regions facilitated exchanges of interaction with other civilizations, and that spread ideas and information. So that is probably how he received it. It's just that we, in our modern era, think that if you didn't have internet, you didn't have TV, you don't have a cell phone, you had no way of communicating. But they did, and it was vast. In the days when John wrote the book of Revelation, there was a circuit. They took those 7 letters, and they went on the circuit throughout the Asia Minor. Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, all those towns that those letters were written to, there was a circuit there. So that's a piece of information that you need to know. And then we're going to do 5 to 7. Whoop, wrong one. No, that's right. Am I wrong? Hold on. I'm in 18, right? 18. Yeah, Jethro returned Moses' wife. Okay. And the 2 sons. Okay. Where did they return them to?
In the wilderness, it says that they came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was camped at the Mount of God.
The mountain of God. Okay, now I really wish I had time for this. I'm going to read these very quickly. The mountain of God. If you do a topical study, even just within the book of Exodus itself, you develop very quickly where is he at this point. Remember earlier I was saying when you have these people who are the size of Austin, Texas, that was a great analogy, traveling through the landmass, they're covering a large space, right? So when they are at Rephidim, when they are at these other places, Massa and Meribah, they are still also at the mountain of God. Okay? Because they haven't changed locations. We're seeing a storyline here. So here, let me show you what it says here in my cross-referencing. Moses came to Horeb, the mountain of God. That was in Exodus 3:1. That was the burning bush encounter, right? Way back in Exodus 3. I looked up a definition of Horeb because this is what it says here in this verse. Horeb is another name for Mount Sinai. Okay? It's where God gave law to Moses at Horeb in the desert. That word Horeb means desert. Okay, why would it be desert? Because they were in the wilderness of Sinai, or of sin, right? Then it says, Moses passed before the people with his staff, and the Lord stood on the rock at where? Horeb. That was chapter 17 we just came out of. They're at Horeb, also called the mountain of God, also called Mount Sinai. You shall worship God at this mountain, he told him back then at the burning bush encounter in chapter 3. He says, you're not going to come here to worship me. What are we seeing them doing already? Jethro worshiped God right there. That's one point. There's going to be more worship yet. And he said, so go bring them out of Egypt to worship here. So where are they? At Mount Sinai. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. That's in Deuteronomy 5:2. Again, he's speaking about the law, the giving of the law in Deuteronomy, and that was at Mount Horeb, and that is where we are right now, okay? It's where they have been since the last chapter. Now, the Lord called Moses to the top of Mount Sinai. That's going to come up in our next chapters in Exodus 19, verse 20. There he gives him the 10 Commandments, okay? Now, where is Mount Sinai, Horeb, the mountain of God? Galatians 4:25 told us it's where? It's in Arabia. Hagar is Sinai in Arabia. So now we know where we are. Geography all done. See, I wish I'd had time to really slow down and take you through that because that was really good stuff. It's on my chart so that you will have it if you want to dig that out for yourself more. Okay, so Jethro now in 8 to 12. He says, now knows the Lord. I shortened it. It says he now knows the Lord, who is greater than all the other gods. And then he goes on, he gives that confession, the offering, and all that, which we already went through. I think it's his covenant-making moment. I think he came into faith. 13 to 18.
Katie, I gotta go.
Okay.
Don't forget your lunches next week. We're gonna eat at my house.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. Now he's talking to, so that was the first half of the book. We talked about that. That's right here. So we're now here. Now we're in the last half, next storyline. Same subject matter. It's not good to be alone. It's not good to do life alone. Before he needed his family, and he not only gained his family back, he gained a brother in faith through his father-in-law coming into faith. So it's not good to be alone. And now in 13 to 18, it's not good to do what?
Wear yourself out.
There you go. That's true. It's not good to do the work alone. So in this part, it's about family, and this part, it's about ministry, right? It's not good to do the work alone. The thing that you are doing is not good. I looked that one up. It says good. It's a good thing, a benefit, and a welfare. It came from its sub-root word, which means beneficial, favorable, and the right action. So it's not good. It's not the right action. Why? 2 reasons. Why?
Well, you'll wear yourself out.
Yep, you will wear yourself out. You will wear out both. Who? Yourself and the people. Have you ever been under a ministry team or a pastor who will not delegate work, will not share the workload, will not share with you what's going on enough that you can step in and even help? Those people are going to wear themselves out, and the congregation or their ministry is going to. I need Kristen so badly. I need Susan. I need all of you when you do the things that you do for me, even literally, truly. When you give me words of affirmation, when you send me texts and emails with pieces of information, some of you regularly share with me things that are going on in your life. You tell me the things that you have been watching, and you share those with me. You give me resources. All of that is me not doing this work alone. You are contributing to my exhortation and my strengthening through the things that you do and say. So that is how a ministry is supposed to work. Do not do it alone, or you will wear yourself out. It's enough work just doing the work that you're supposed to do. Kay Arthur teaches it this way when she teaches spiritual gifts. She says, you need to know what your spiritual gifting is. And once you figure out what your strongest spiritual gift is, she says, stay within locative of sphere. Meaning, find the one thing you're best at. Be a master of something, not a jack of all trades. Because when you're a master of something, you will really edify the body of Christ. God says he created the body. He gave all the different parts of the body, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the feet, the hands. Each one designed by him, given by him. He gave it to you at your spiritual gift, and he says, figure out what God gave you a gift to do and do it. And try not to get spread too thin. And if you get a ministry handed to you by God's hand, share the workload. That's what this particular piece of information here is. It's not good to do this work alone. You will wear yourself out, both yourself and other people. And you all would not benefit as much as you do if I didn't get all this input that you guys bring to me on a regular basis. Carol just brought me a lovely little gift. It's a great exhortation to me. Thank you, Carol. You're my girl today. But all of you do this, and people online, and I get phone calls, I get emails, I get text messages. I love it. So don't stop doing that. I love them. 19 to 23, last one, and we're done. How far am I in over the board here?
Not so bad. It's 8 minutes.
Okay, not too bad.
24 to 25.
If I get under 10, I'm good. Select able men able to bear the burden.
You still have 24 to 27 too.
Oh. Okay, so you need to select able men. There's a great teaching in there about what constitutes able men. Yeah, so now I got to find out I missed one on my chart here. Oh. The grand finale on this is the smartest thing of all. So it's 24, and it goes to where? 27. Yeah, I totally didn't even put it on here. And the grand finale is, what did Moses do?
Listen.
Moses listened. I wish he would listen to the Lord a little bit more frequently. But this is really cool. So some of the pastors I listened to spoke of the fact that Jethro gave such wise counsel. It is probably attributed to the fact that he himself was a, quote, prince of Midian, meaning he had leadership facility. He was kind of like a governor or a mayor of his own making. A tribal thing is what it was for them. And so he had a lot of experience with this, number one. But number two, he had come to love and appreciate God and God's people through what we just saw in his confession of faith and his sacrifices to the Lord and the fellowship meal that they had. Now he's giving counsel that seems to be enlightened by God himself. And because of the relationship that you see up here at the beginning of this, how he comes to him, they embrace, they kiss, they share exchanges. Moses even bows down to him, which is really cool. They have a real love and affection and respect for one another. So when Jethro speaks, Moses listens, right? Good counsel, good advice for anyone that's leading any kind of ministry. And in your personal life, whether you're leading ministry or not, you're leading in your family in some capacity, you have circles of friends, you have your grandchildren and children. There are still ways that this is still going to all apply to you. Don't do the work alone. Delegate things out. Listen to wise counsel when it comes your way, and you will not exhaust yourself. And that was one of the things I saw at the end of that. He says you will be able to endure. Endure means to stand, persist, be steadfast, and remain. You won't be able to do that if you don't listen and share the workload. Well, phew, I know, I'm sorry, but it was so it was just so much to cover. But this was amazing pictures, but this was equally as good. And it lays a foundation for really good ministry in your life and how you should respond to people giving you advice and counsel on things. Okay, so we will see you next week. Remember, you're going to do, what did I say? It's 7A. You are going to do pages 59 to 63 of next week's lesson. Okay, that'll take you halfway through day 3. Bye, you guys. See you next week.